Welcome to It's Upgrade Season, the only place to get raw and unfiltered advice on how to get your shit together 1 week at a time. I'm your host, Alexandria, and join me every Monday for The Upgrade and every Friday for The Wind Down, where I'm going to be answering your dilemmas. Small shifts, huge upgrades. Let's fucking do this. Loneliness is not the absence of people, but the absence of connection. And this is going to be our theme for today's solo episode. I'm going to be deep diving on loneliness, feeling loneliness, navigating loneliness. And the first place I want to begin is how pervasive loneliness is. There was a study by Cigna in 2020, and it said over 60% of Americans reported feeling lonely. So I brought this to my Instagram, and guys, I cannot tell you how many responses I had. I actually have them up here. I'm going to be going through some of the responses that you sent in, but just so many incredible women saying how lonely they felt for various different reasons, whether it's due to motherhood, being single, dealing with grief, being an expat. So many experiences of loneliness. I have experienced profound loneliness in my life, and I think one of the biggest experiences that I had was when I moved to Australia when I was 22. Prior to this, I had been at university, or college as they call it over here. I think they call it college, which is very confusing, by the way, because in the UK, college is the thing you go to before university. But anyway, so I was at university, and I had honestly the most incredible university experience. I know it's not like that for everyone, so I'm super, super grateful for the experience I had. But I just felt so fully myself. I was so confident. I met all these amazing friends who I really got on such an amazing level that I'm not sure I'd truly experienced before, except for with maybe a handful of people. And I was just having a wild time, you guys. I was having so much fun. Honestly, the university years of my life are some of the most golden years of my entire life. And yes, there was layers to it. I definitely had a dose of self-love that I was lacking. There was definitely other things I was struggling with during that time. But I really felt connected. I felt very well loved. I lived in a house full of girls. We tell each other everything. We were all super close. We had an amazing guy group of friends who lived down the road. We really just lived in and out of each other's houses. I fucking loved it. It's so funny because I definitely have an introverted energy, but then I'm right on the cusp of introvert, extrovert, and I can feel that because I also love just being surrounded by people. I remember when we went to Burning Man, it was a similar experience being in the camp. I love that feeling of knowing the people I love are around me. I just feel so safe and so secure, which makes so much sense why loneliness feels so painful. So I went from this university experience to going to study in Australia, and I chose to study in Australia. I really wanted to travel. I traveled solo a lot by this point already. So I traveled around Vietnam, Thailand, and Laos by myself. And I was not lonely for a minute, you guys. Again, one of those experiences you think could be profoundly lonely actually wasn't, which just shows loneliness is a really nuanced thing to talk about. So I'm traveling solo. I don't feel lonely for a minute. Again, I'm meeting all these incredible people, having all these amazing experiences. Sometimes I meet a friend for a day. Some of them have turned into friends for a lifetime. But honestly, just felt in deep connection most of the time. And the times where I was by myself, I consciously wanted time out. I consciously wanted time out by myself. So I have these experiences. I'm excited to go traveling. I assume that any other travels will mimic this same pattern that I've experienced so far. So I moved myself to Australia, aged 20, was I 21 or 22 by the time I left? Around 21, 22 anyway. And I am just instantly struck by a deep sense of loneliness. Prior to going to Australia, I fall in love with this little shit, is how I would describe him. I should probably say something more profound, but I'm going to go there. He was like the first guy since my super serious school boyfriend that I really felt that real spark with. Like, it felt sparky, it felt fun, and I just really felt it with him. I really enjoyed the time we had together. He blew me away as well. He would take me for these dates. He was paying for my dates. Like, Girls, I dated in uni, and I know some girls don't have this experience, but I was lucky if a guy paid for a fucking Jaeger bomb. They were not paying for a date. So along comes this guy who seems to, being the operative word, seems to have his shit together. He's paying for dates. He's arranging amazing dates. I'm like, this is incredible. I'm blown away by him. We have this whirlwind romance. He knows I'm going to move to Australia. I know I'm moving to Australia, but I feel like we just can't help it. There's this like star-crossed lovers energy, and we fall deeply in what I think is love. To the point, I remember my sister met him. I didn't introduce him to my parents, which was probably a red flag, but I introduced him to my sister, and my sister, when the fallout happened, which I'll get to in a moment, she was like, oh my God, I was feeling so sorry for him. I thought he was going to be heartbroken when you left. Plot spoiler, it turns out he had a girlfriend the whole time. So he had a secret girlfriend. And I find this out literally maybe 2 weeks before I go to Australia. So I am heartbroken, fully heartbroken. I'm questioning myself. There's just so many layers when you experience something like that. You go back and question every experience you had together. You question yourself and whether you can be a good gauge of people's characters. Just so many fucking questions. And I moved to Australia and I'm heartbroken. So I already start on the back foot. I actually flew to Australia. I was 22 because it was Valentine's Day and I got to miss Valentine's Day. And I was like, well, thank fuck I'm missing it this year because what a shit show. This guy does not leave me alone. He properly hounds me. Like when I don't respond to text, he will email me. He's finding any way to contact me. And he's just, Alex, I fucked up so bad. I really love you. Like I want to be with you. My head is scrambled eggs. And I really just wanted to paint that scene because I didn't land into Australia in the best energy. I've landed heartbroken. I've landed confused. And instead of really like throwing myself in and immersing myself in this incredible opportunity, my head's consumed with this fuckboy instead. So I just started on the back foot. And from there, I really felt this sense of loneliness. When I moved to Australia, I found that it didn't work the same as it worked in England. When I got to university in England, everyone wanted to make friends with each other. Whereas in Australia, everyone had friendship groups and they've been friends since they were like 5 or 6, these deeply ingrained friendship groups. And it was just really tough to crack them. It didn't feel like people really wanted to welcome you in. And owning my own experience, I wasn't in the best place. I just wasn't feeling my most confident. I wasn't feeling my best in any way, shape or form. My confidence had been completely knocked. I was heartbroken. It was just a shit show. So I made a good group of friends in Australia, but it was a very small group. And I will also hold my hands up that I fucked up my friendship group a little bit because I slept with one of my really good friends, which I say in a jokey tone, but is something that I still feel really bad about. He was such a good friend to me, and I was just in this fucked up headspace and lonely. And I share this because I feel like I'm not the only one who has done this. And I also feel like it also speaks to how loneliness can send us into this kind of desperate energy where we are seeking companionship, we are seeking connection, potentially in all the wrong places. As someone who has truly experienced loneliness, who has sought connection in all the wrong places and made such a shit show of a mess as a consequence of it, I want to talk about loneliness now. And it's really interesting because I had this idea to talk about loneliness because actually a friend was expressing an experience of loneliness at the end of last year. And I was thinking, do you know what? I really haven't felt lonely for a while. I had this deep, intense experience of loneliness in Australia. There's definitely been moments in between, but I really just haven't felt lonely in a while. Bam, in comes the universe. And recently I have felt experiences of loneliness again. We're in peak hot season in Austin. A lot of people leave Austin during that time, which means some of my best friends aren't here right now. I had to miss a really close friend's wedding recently in the UK where all my friends were, and it's one of my close friends and she's getting married and I'm not there. And just all these things have compounded. I've just felt a little bit lonely. So this episode is medicine for me as much as it is for you, hopefully. And like I said, I'm going to weave in some of your stories as well. So I touched on this already, but loneliness isn't just a lack of physical company. It's a deeper feeling of being disconnected from others. And I share that because you can be surrounded by people. You can be the quote unquote popular girl and still feel profoundly lonely if you don't feel a deep sense of connection. There is also physical loneliness as well. A lot of people experienced this during the pandemic when we were cut off, we were isolated. There's the sense of physically not being near the people that you love. And loneliness has the wildest effects on us. So loneliness doesn't just affect our emotional well-being, it can impact our physical and mental health too. So chronic loneliness can lead to anxiety, it can lead to depression, and it can even lead to physical health problems such as heart disease and a weakened immune function. And there was actually a study that was published in the journal Heart that found that loneliness can increase the risk of coronary heart disease by 29% and stroke by 32%. So loneliness isn't just something that exists in our mind, it has a profound effect on us physically and mentally. And I love this quote by Norman Cousins, and he says, "The eternal quest of the human being is to shatter his loneliness." His, her, they, them, obviously. But I think it really highlights something. We are inherently social beings, and I think we are always striving for a sense of connection to ourselves, connection to others, and I think we're also striving for a deeper sense of connection. I think we have a profound desire to be seen and truly see others in our lives. And I feel like this goes back to the caveman days. I feel like we needed to survive by being in tribes, by being in communities. That was how we were protected. I do think there's a part of us where this is very instinctual to help us quite literally stay alive. And it was really interesting. This actually turns out to be the truth. So I was like, I have this theory that, this is why it happens. But it turns out there was a study by Julianne Holt Lundstad, and it says that having strong social connections can increase the likelihood of survival by 50%. And if you look at the blue zones as well, the blue zones are these incredible areas across the world where people live the longest. There's some fascinating studies on why people do. I personally am a massive fan of the study. I think it's the place in Italy where they drink wine, and I'm like, big up the wine. But one of the things that comes out, I think it's Japan, but it's the social connections. It's coming into community helps people live longer. So it's really, I think, this deep desire we have, but it's also a biological need within us that drives us to feel connected. So I've already shared some of my experiences of loneliness, and before we dive into kind of combating loneliness and how to support yourself through the experience of it, I wanted to draw on some of your experiences that you shared on me through Instagram. So I asked the question, do you feel lonely? When are the times that you felt most alone? And do you feel physically lonely, i.e. no friends around, or have friends but feel a lack of connection? And some of the responses were so interesting. So one of the first ones was so lonely due to motherhood and expat life mainly. I think this is a really common one with motherhood. It's wild because I think it's one of those brilliant examples of how you're not physically lonely, but you're mentally lonely. You feel a lack of connection because you have a baby and this baby is glued to you 24/7, and yet you can feel so alone in that experience. It's isolating going through periods. I want to say early motherhood, but I'm going to say periods of motherhood because I think motherhood really has a propensity to shift in and out of intensity. It's incredibly isolating and lonely. There's a lot of shifts that you're experiencing. Some of the time you don't even know who the fuck you are. All your time is reprioritized. Whereas you had time to prioritize on connection to self, connection to others, brunch with the girls, just the ease to do those things, suddenly you can't do that. Or you have to really intentionally structure it and organize it around someone else, which just naturally makes it harder to do. Or you do it, but you feel guilty and you realize actually you want to be with your child right now. There's almost this sense of limbo of really being in two places of craving and desiring and deeply needing that time in connection with others and not wanting to be away from that connection with your baby. And as a consequence, feeling lonelier than ever. So there's definitely that experience of loneliness in motherhood. And expat life, another one that I can speak to. Expat life for me personally is fucking incredible. I am so grateful that I get to experience living abroad. As I say never, but I really don't see myself living in my home country again of the UK. And at the same time, there is always a slight sense of displacement. I was actually at lunch the other day, and it was one of the first time I realized I was at lunch with all Americans. I was the only non-American there. And there was a moment in my brain where it just registered as this otherness of, oh, no one's English here. There's also just this sense of slight displacement in small and big things, cultural references, food, what you call things. Not having your family immediately around you. That's one that I've really felt since having Leo. We have the most amazing childcare support, and we are so blessed to have that. And I really feel not having my mum around. I really feel not having my family around. And it feels amazing when I do have them around. It's going to make me emotional now. But there's so many times where I wish I could just pop over and see my family. And there's so many times I feel sad that he doesn't get to just see them so instantly and so availably. And I feel incredibly grateful I have such an amazing family that I want that with. And I really do actually get incredibly intentional, focused, deep time with them. And that's a real positive expat life, because when I do have time with them, it's so focused, it's so intentional, it's so deep. But it can be lonely. It can feel hard. My friend's wedding, recently, I really make an effort to make sure that I go to as many of these occasions as possible. And this is actually it's the second one, but it's only really, okay, it's not the second one. There's probably been about 4 weddings I've had to miss, but I really try and avoid it. And I make a hell of a lot of those weddings, and I made a hell of a lot of sacrifices to make sure I get to them. I flew to one of my friend's weddings when I was 5 months pregnant and incredibly sick and incredibly nauseous, and I just made it happen. We flew to France just for the wedding, and then we flew back. I really do make sure I make the effort, and there are times where I just can't justify it anymore, particularly having Leo. So this wedding in particular, I was back already in May, where I was a bridesmaid for a friend, and wouldn't have missed it for the world. But then to fly back already in July, it's just too much. The jet lag's a lot on Leo. We've also flown back again in September because it's Jake's mum's 60th birthday. We just had to make decisions, but that's hard. That sucks. There was another one that related to being an expat as well, and it said the feeling of displacement of having 2 homes and never really feeling like I belong in either. You know, that's a really difficult sensation to have, to feel like I belong in both places but not one. I think we're really taught the idea of a forever home. We're taught the idea of settling down. We're taught the idea of really growing roots in one place. And I think there's value in that. I think there's a reason why we're taught to create a sanctuary in a forever home and grow roots. And I think there's many of us who don't feel like there is one place that is fully home. I definitely can relate to that experience as well. I love Austin, and I love Austin with other places. I love Tulum, but I love Tulum with other places. There's this feeling of, for completeness, I need different parts of different places, and I need to bring those together. So I totally get that. There was also some other ones on here that I really want to shout out. First of all, being a single parent, days out on holidays can be hard, just the 2 of you. I have said this before, but I will say this a million times. Single parents are honestly, in my eyes, the real life superheroes. Like, the amount of respect that I have, because physically holding it down, like having children is a lot on you physically, but also mentally and emotionally, and not having that respite, not having that break, not having that partner that you can tag team and say, hey, I need to take 5 minutes out, or I need to go take a pee, or whatever. Like, that is so, so hard. You can really tap into feeling that energy of comparison almost as well, of seeing, you said here about days out on holidays, it's hard, just the 2 of you. I can imagine there's also an element of comparison. And I want to bring that in with the conversation around loneliness, because it's something I've been reflecting on with this recent experience of loneliness. Am I actually lonely, or do I think I should be seeing more people or having more social interactions? Because this last week, I actually went for lunch with friends. went to Pilates and for a blow dry with a friend. And we also went for dinner with the same friend, but as couples. So I've actually had a lot of social interactions this week. And part of me is worrying in my head. And again, full transparency here. Is that enough? Should I be socializing more? Should I have a wider group of friends? I don't know the answer all the time. I definitely think it's quality over quantity. I am 100% on that. Quality over quantity. And the quality assurance is there, you guys. Like, I am so grateful for the amazing people that I have in my life. And I do find myself questioning. I can be quite introverted. I do keep my circle really small these days. Sometimes I question myself in that. I'm like, should I be making more of an effort to see more people, to get to know more people, to widen my circle? I don't know. I don't have the fucking answer, you guys. If you have the answer, DM me. But this is something I'm questioning myself when it comes to the principle of loneliness and friendships and things like this. Other responses that we had at the weekends, i.e. when not working, physically lonely, home alone. And also when after being out with friends who go home to their family and I go home alone. So I think this is really speaking to the experience of being single when a lot of your community are in partnership, and this feeling of being home alone and going out with people and then they're going back with other people and you're going back by yourself. Really difficult experience. You can feel how loneliness steps in those moments. And again, it's the comparison as well of seeing other people in relation and feeling, oh, I don't have that. Other ones that came up. My mother and 2 friends have passed away in the last year and death feels lonely. And then we had another response that said, when my friend died and only told a few selected people and they let me down. So really loneliness after death as well. I remember having a conversation with my grandmother about this, and it really stuck with me to just really appreciate having the friends around you now that you have around, even if that is small, even if that's a select few. And I just remember her sharing about how so many of her friends are dead now and that her friendship circle have died off. My granny is in her 90s. You can see how that happens, but I know from the women who have responded here, they're not in their 90s, they're younger. Death can hit us at any time. And feeling like these people that we loved so deeply in our life and felt so connected to, and feeling the loss of them, but also then feeling the disconnection from other people that can be a consequence of grief. Again, an intensely lonely experience. And A, I want to thank you ladies for sharing these with me. And B, I just wanted to share these because I can speak of my own experiences, but there's experiences here of loneliness that I haven't experienced. And I wanted to share these because they are shared experiences. Just because I don't share them, I know there's going to be someone else listening who does share them. And I think that is the first antidote to loneliness. Knowing that we all experience feeling lonely. You are not alone in feeling lonely. We all go through this shared experience. That study said 60% of people. I would gauge it's more than that, but still, this feeling of loneliness is a shared experience. You're not alone in that. But I want to share some tools, some tips, some things that have helped me on my own journey and some things that I'm working through right now. So the first thing that I want to talk about is isolating and making assumptions, because I have realized that I have created my own loneliness at times through doing these 2 things. 1, isolating myself, and 2, making assumptions. And I bring them in together because they are interrelated, at least in my own experience. So I have made assumptions about what people think of me or that people don't like me. I have been on the receiving end of being made the villain in someone else's story. I am not the kind of person who will go around defending my name. I like to believe that silence speaks volumes and that karma does the work for me. I have experienced that to be true. I have had people come to me and say, so-and-so said all these horrific things about you, and I'm so sorry, because I can see, and my experiences of you is that they're not true. I can really see how they're in mean girl energy. I can really see how they're unhappy and they were projecting onto you. I have had experiences where those people have come to me themselves and apologized for the things that they have said to me. It's also hard. Sometimes I wonder whether I should defend myself more. There are situations and I'm like, should I speak up? Should I defend myself more? Should I try and defend my name? It sucks when you know that you're being made the villain and you actually know that you really didn't do what they said you did. That the whole situation's been blown up and misappropriated, and maybe because of their own lens of trauma, maybe through their own experience, what they're going through, they're unable to see what's truly going on right now. And I think it's important to speak to here. There's always two truths in every story. I'm not denying that. I'm not trying to make myself out to be holier than thou and, you know, take no responsibility in situations. But I do think there is a lot to be said for people making other people the villain because it feels like the easier thing at the time. And it's only really in hindsight they can see that wasn't the reality of the situation. So I have been in those situations where people are bitching about me. People are saying things that I know aren't true. People are making me the villain of my story. And the thing that I then go on and do is assume that anyone associated with that person fucking hates me. And I've been stretched with this in my personal life, and I've been stretched with this in my business with previous clients. And it's stretched. It has stretched me. It's been a gift. It's been a gift for me to really check in with my own assumptions. Where am I making up stories that I don't know to be true? And to also not leap to step two. So what I would do is I would make an assumption and then I would isolate myself because I'd be like, they fucking hate me anyway. What is the point? When you then isolate yourself, people then do get an experience of you that you're shut down or you're very isolated. Yes, of course, there are going to be certain levels of protecting yourself when you're in that situation. But the irony is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become isolated because you've shut yourself down and you've cut yourself off. So the invitation here is to question your assumptions because they're not necessarily true. And actually my experience has often been that the opposite is true, that they have noted how I haven't said anything negative and the other person has, and that has spoke volumes in itself. And secondly, to remain open, to allow each individual to have their own experience of you and to be in the energy and the frequency of love, regardless of what you think might have been said or what preconception they might have of you. And life be lifing. People may have a preconception of you, but you can't adjust that. That's just going to happen. What you do get to do is show them the real you, and then they get to make a real decision on you. And it's going to be sad. Not everyone's going to like you, and that is okay. That's part of life. That's part of intimacy. Part of people truly seeing the real you and you truly revealing the real you. And that is how you create real connection, by the way, by being the real you, not putting up a false pretense of who you think you should be. People aren't going to like you, and that's okay because other people are going to fucking love you. And you just get to be a yes for the people who fucking love you. And let's be honest, I don't fucking love everyone. I meet people and I don't resonate with them and we don't vibe and I don't dislike them and I don't judge them, but I'm like, that wasn't a resonance. And then there's other people that come into your life and you just instantly vibe. I've had that experience recently. I've had a friend come into my life and we just got on instantly. Like our values are so aligned. We love the same kind of things. Like, of course there's going to be differences because we're different human beings, but it's just so easy. So let people find you who you're an easy yes for them too. So the second thing I would advise here is reaching out. So another thing that I will hold my hands up and admit that I have done is when I'm feeling lonely, I create a self-fulfilling prophecy of loneliness. I don't reach out to people and I'm like, I want people to reach out to me and prove that I'm not lonely. You can just see how this is a recipe for disaster. So if you are feeling lonely, that is not an invitation to go more introverted and go within. That is an invitation to reach out. And I like to actually be really intentional on this. So get clear on who you actually want to spend time with. And this is what I did recently. I literally got my journal out and I wrote down the values that were important to me in my life. And I then thought, who are the friends that embody these values and meet me in alignment with these values that I want to spend more time with? Some of them were people that I already spend time with and I was like, cool, I just get to deepen those relationships. Some of them were people that I haven't spent time with and I haven't consciously cultivated a friendship with recently. I'm going to shout out two women I absolutely love right now, Maggie and Jeanette. Two incredible humans who I love and adore. And in the chaos of motherhood and time zones and them being busy and me being busy, Maggie's writing a book, Jeanette's in motherhood, I'm in motherhood. Like, we've just all been in these experiences. I haven't put enough effort into those friendships. And I get to call myself out on that. And this is why I'm saying it very publicly as well, because I fucking love you both. I haven't consciously put enough time into those friendships, and I really want to. So I got really intentional in this practice. I was like, who have I not poured into that I really want to, who I really love? And then also recognizing who are people that you're maybe spending time with that you don't want to spend that much time with. I realized recently there'd been this event happening and I hadn't been invited, and like I felt that sting of like loneliness for a minute and that left out wound energy. But when I really sat with myself, and it's so interesting because like, why do men just get this stuff so much more instantly sometimes? But I spoke to Jake about it and he was like, I don't feel left out. I wanted to hang out with those people anyway. And I was like, how is this just so simple for you? But it was an invitation, because when I really sat with myself, I was like, I wouldn't have wanted to be there and spending my time, my precious time, this finite resource, this finite thing with those people anyway. So you really get to be intentional with who you want to hang out with, and then you get to reach out. If you want to generate more social interactions, start creating more social interactions, start sending more messages, start FaceTiming more people, start setting up more dates. I'm not big on WhatsApp, but like I love a random FaceTime and I love seeing people in person. So that's where I focus my time and my energy. And also just little things like making sure I'm conscious around that. I have a whole episode on time blocking that will help with this. But for example, we're going to California and I'm like, I want to spend more time there because I have some friends in California who I love and adore, and I haven't spent enough time with in the last 2 years. So I'm going to stay longer in California so I can actually just hang out and fucking see them. You can also manifest friendships as well. I have manifested, this is so creepy, but true. I don't think I've admitted this to some of my friends, but whatever. I've manifested some of my friends that I have into my life. So get clear. What are the qualities that you want in your friends? What conversations do you want to be having? Again, what aligned values? I think aligned values are so important in friendships, and one of the places where miscommunication and disruption can happen. So start to manifest those friends. And if you don't have those friends already to reach out to, start to find them. Go to events, in-person events, a great place to meet friends. I've met so many friends through in-person events. Search Eventbrite, look on Instagram, people you follow, they hosting events, people attending events. Go to in-person events. Online places as well. There's so many, again, Maggie and Jeanette, who I just mentioned, who I love and adore, I met through a mastermind. So joining mastermind, joining group programs, such an amazing way to connect with other people. Retreats. Again, I just met the most amazing few people at a retreat I was on with Jake, obsessed with one of them. I met them at a retreat. So going on retreats, again, you're going to have shared values more likely than not. You're going to have shared topics of conversation if you're both on the same retreat, because there's a shared interest there to begin with. So this is particularly good if you're searching for deeper connections. If you want deeper connections, women with aligned values, retreats are a great place to find them. We're hosting retreats this November. Oh my God, we've got a Tulum retreat is just going to be so magical. We're going to be diving deep into feminine energy, unleashing a little bit of tantric energy. We're going to be doing some really juicy practices, as well as like traditional Mayan Temazcal ceremony. That Temazcal ceremony is one of the most bonding things you can do with other women. Like, I've done it twice now on the retreats, and just we come out just so deeply connected, not just the earth, but each other. And then we also have the Mallorca retreat next June, and spaces are going really fast on it. Like, that Mallorca retreat is a popular one. So if you haven't reached out to me already and you're interested in coming, I'll drop the links, but also just drop me a little DM on Instagram and we can talk about it. So retreats are a great place to find people as well. But there's so many different groups and places that you can find people. I'm a massive fan of in person, but also online, or reach out to someone on Instagram. Find an Instagram bestie. Again, so many of my good friends I met through Instagram. I always love Laura Phelan. Like, she basically reached out to me, was like, let's be friends. I was like, I'm down. And then we met up in London, and I love and adore her. So lots of different ways that you can cultivate those friendships if you don't have them already. Next up, learn to love your own company. And I think this is an important nuance with loneliness as well, is that often we are seeking outward connection, but sometimes loneliness can come from lack of inward connection. So how can you really get to know yourself on a deeper level? How can you take yourself on dates? How can you read? How can you study? How can you get to know yourself truly? I love this quote here, which is Alan Burstyn, and it says, "What a lovely surprise to finally discover how unlonely being alone can be." And there's so much truth in that. When you realize you are this cavern of wonders that you get to uncover and you get to know on these deeper levels, you realize there's so much joy in your own company. There is so much to be uncovered in your own experience. So I really invite you to dive deeper into that. And honestly, sometimes the cure for loneliness is learning to love your own company. So I really invite you to go deeper with that. The next thing is to practice self-compassion. Remember, it's okay to be lonely. As I said already, it's a really common human experience. So just really love on yourself and notice how you can nurture yourself in those times. There was an example there where it said when you've been out and you go home and other people are going home to your partners. To me, that really speaks to how can you nurture yourself when you go back and love on yourself even deeper. So for me personally, if that was me, something that I would do would be like do a really beautiful self-care regime to get ready for bed. So I love skincare, so I'd be doing like a 20-step skincare regime, or I'd be getting in the bath, or I would be journaling or listening to an audiobook. These are all bespoke to me. These are the things that feel nurturing to me. But think for you, what feels nurturing as an experience for you? That's definitely something I've leaned into recently as well. When those tinges of loneliness have come up, I've been like, okay, but how can I nurture myself right now? How could I really look after myself right now? I'm really leaning into some of those practices. Another one for me is organizing my house. So just feel free to take that as well. Another support for loneliness can be being of service. So there's a quote by Gandhi that says the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. I think it's such a reminder that connection often comes from giving and sharing with others. That could be something like volunteering somewhere local, but it can also be creating something to share with others. Maybe it's through sharing your story. I know that when I was feeling lonely in my experience of HG, something that has helped me feel so much less lonely was other women sharing their stories of loneliness in HG, other women sharing their stories of experiencing HG. That's why now something that I try and do to pour out to be of service is I'm trying to consciously create more ways that I can share my story of HG to be of service to others, so that when they're looking for those resources, when they're looking for those stories and support, the support that you get through hearing other stories, I can be one of those people for them as well. So really getting creative with ways that you can be of service to others can actually alleviate your own feeling of loneliness as well. And the last thing that I want to say here is just if you really are struggling with loneliness and it feels really pervasive and it feels really dark, seek professional help. I have had a therapist on and off for 6 years. 6 years? Maybe longer, but around 6 years. And I recently started seeing her again, and I fucking love my therapist. It is such an amazing point of connection that just really grounds me back in. It plugs me back into myself. It also helps me share with another person. That can help with loneliness in itself. I've had experiences recently where I haven't felt like I can share with other friends necessarily. I've had experiences recently where I haven't necessarily wanted to share with other friends. So it's felt really good to have this impartial person that I can share things with, and it's completely confidential. It's completely judgment-free. That in itself has been a point of connection that has alleviated loneliness. And I just think it's really important to really honor ourselves with the connection that we need. When this episode comes out, I'm going to put a post on Instagram as well. That post on Instagram is going to invite you to find your soul sisters. This is literally just dropped into me, so I'm going to run with it because I think it's such a good idea. I'm going to create a post where you can find other soul sisters. So what I really encourage you to do is after you've listened to this episode, head to my Instagram, find that post and share your experience right now. Is it that you are an expat? Is it that you feel like you belong in 2 different places? Is it that you're experiencing grief? Are you a single mom? Are you a mother just navigating identity? Whatever it is, I want you to post on this Instagram post and start to find your people, start to find those other people that you can have these shared experiences with, because whilst loneliness can be so impactful on our physical and mental being, connection can be so healing. Connection truly can be the thing that drives us forward, that allows us to reconnect to ourselves, that fills us with love, that fills us with purpose. And I know that if you're listening to this, you are worthy of connection. There are people out there ready to connect with you, who want to connect with you. And I'm really excited to get to be the little matchmaker in that. So I'm sending you so much love. I'm sending you so much joy. I'm sending you so much abundance. And once again, just a little special shout out to all the women who so vulnerably share their experiences of loneliness, because thank you for co-collaborating on this episode with me and making it such a juicy one.